How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're starting Daf Yud Gimel, Daf Love. Daf 13 of Masechta Menachos. Friends, we begin the second parak of Masechta Menachos, and we're going to talk about Pigul. I'm not anticipating a super long daf today, but I feel like I'm unreliable on these things. Ein matir mefagel matir. That is the first sugya, an interesting sugya. Essentially, we're going to see the interesting perspective of Rabbi Yossi when it comes to Pigul, particularly with regard to the komets and the levonah. And then we are going to see about collecting the levonah from the mixing bowl and some interesting insights around that. Friends, let's jump into Daf 13 of Masechta Menachos. I feel like I keep on being about to say Yevamis. Okay. Friends, we begin at the new parak at the Mishnah, Yud Gimel Amid Aleph HaKometz Es Aminchos. This, I believe, there's the next parak is called HaKometz Rabbah. I don't know why. I think that's because it's probably bigger than this one. Is this one called HaKometz Zuta, maybe? I don't know. This one's only a few pages, like 4 pages. Kometz Rabbah is like 20 pages. HaKometz es ha-mincha, somebody who kometzes the mincha, lechol shiarel, to eat the shirayim, ola haktir komtza l'macher. Okay, so somebody take a classic kind of pigul so far. Somebody, a kohen takes a kometz from the mixing bowl with the intention of eating the shiari mincha tomorrow, or to burn on the mizbeach the komets tomorrow. So Moda Rabbi Yossi Bazer. Rabbi Yossi admits here, Sheu Pigul v'chayven alav kares. Rabbi Yossi will admit here that we're talking about Pigul, we're talking about a chiyuv kares. However, Lehakte levonah, so here is where Rabbi Yossi differs. You see, we had already seen yesterday this opinion, right? In the Mishnah in Yud Aleph Beis, we had said, I'm reading from the Mishnah from yesterday, Lehakte levonah also lemacher, Pigul v'chayven alav kares. We had said yesterday that if the komets is scooped up with the intention of burning the komets tomorrow, ki luchutz l'zmanu, so there's chiyuv kares for that. And here comes Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi posel ve'imbo kares. Rabbi Yossi says, look, the korban will be posel, but there won't be a chiyuv kares. There won't be a chiyuv kares, says Rabbi Yossi. Pigul chayven alav kares. Whereas the chacham say, no, ma pitom, of course it's pigul. Like we had said yesterday, that if a kohen were to take a kometz from a mincha with the intention of burning the, right, zachilas mizbeach, right, burning the levonah. So somebody, right, so the kohen takes a kometz from the mincha with the intention of burning the levonah chutz l'zmano. So the chacham say, of course, it's a chiyuv kares. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's not a chiyuv kares. It's a what does it say? Posel, the mincha is posel, but there's no chiyuv kares. According to Rabbi Yossi. Amalo, the rabbi said to Rabbi Yossi, Ma shina zeh min hazebach. Why should this be any different than a korban, though? The rabbi said to Rabbi Yossi, I don't understand. You of course agree, which he does, that when it comes to, let's say, a korban chatas, if one slaughters a korban chatas with the intention of burning the emurim michutz l'zmano the next day, so Rabbi Yossi agrees that a kavanah about burning the emurim would be pigul. So they say to Rabbi Yossi, why would kavanah about burning the levonah be any different? Once again, why is this any different than a korban? And he says to them, the difference is that by a korban, the blood, the emurim, the meat, it's all from the same animal. It's all the same thing. Levonah eina min mincha. However, the levonah is sort of an outlier. It's not part of the mincha in a certain sense. The Gemara is going to explain what exactly this means. But here we have an interesting shita of Reb Yossi that scooping up the komets with the intention of burning the levonah chutz lizmano is not actually pigul. The korban's pasul, but there's no chiyuv karis. Friends, now let's jump in to the Gemara. Lama li lemisna modet Reb Yossi bazo. The Mishnah had said something very interesting in the Reisha. It had said, I'm reading the Reisha from the Mishnah, that somebody who scoops up komets from a mincha in order with the intention of eating the shirayim, the shara mincha chutz lizmanu, or burning the komets chutz lizmanu, modet Rabbi Yossi bazeh shu pigul v'chayvin of course. Here Rabbi Yossi admits that it's pigul. Like, okay, thanks, Rabbi Yossi. Why is the Mishnah say? Why is it important for the Mishnah to point out that here Rabbi Yossi says, okay, fine, this is pigul. I agree. How come that's important to point out? Why not just say that he disagrees when it comes to the levonah? Why do we have to say when it comes to the shiari mincha and the komets, here Rabbi Yossi agrees? Why don't we just assume he agrees so long as he doesn't disagree? In the Sefer, he disagrees. There he disagrees. The answer is Mishum de Kaboy lemisna Sefer, because since in the next part of the Mishnah, lehakte levonah lemacher, that when the komets is scooped up with the intention of burning the levonah chutz lizmano, Rabbi Yossi Omer pasul b'karis. Rabbi Yossi says in that case, it's not pigul, it's actually, right? There's no chiyuv karis. It's possible, but there's no chiyuv karis. So, I may have thought time of Rabbi Yossi mishum de kasaver in mefagel b'chatzi matir afilu reshanami. Komashman d'ba mode. You hear that? Very, very interesting. The concept of mefagel b'chatzi matir is a figure that we've seen before. Is there a concept? Is there a concept of pigul when it comes to chatzi matir? What's chatzi matir? Well, when it comes to levonah, there's something that masha ein kain by an animal. By an animal, there's one matir. You do the zrikas adam, now you're ready. Now you could burn the emur man of mizbeach. If you can eat, if it's a korban chatas, for example, now the kohanim can eat the meat. There's one matir. There's one. What's the word I'm thinking of? Bottleneck, whatever, choke point. I don't know. Zrikas adam. When it comes to a mincha, there are two. By mincha, there are two. There's the burning of the komets and the burning of the levonah. Therefore, I may have thought that, when Rabbi Yossi says, scooping up the komets with the intention of burning the levonah the next day, Rabbi Yossi says it's not pigul, there's no chiyuv karis. I may have thought, why does Rabbi Yossi say that there's no chiyuv karis? Because it's only, you're having kavana, you're having machshavas pigul only by the levonah, to burn the levonah the next day. But the levonah was only one of the matirs. There's also the komets. Maybe Rabbi Yossi said that there's no pigul by the levonah when there's the machshava about the levonah because they mefagel b'chatzi matir. It's only the levonah after all. There's also the komets. They mefagel b'chatzi matir. And therefore maybe he would say also by the reisha that when you scoop up the levonah with the intention of burning it chutz lizmano, I'm sorry. When you scoop up the komets, when you scoop up the flour, when you scoop up the komets with the intention of burning it b'chutz lizmano, maybe Rabbi Yossi would say there as well that there's no chiyuv karis because it's only mefagel b'chatzi matir. It's only this flour scoop. What about the levonah? So therefore, it was important for the Mishnah to say that here Rabbi Yossi admits. Rabbi Yossi admits that when scooping up the komets with the intention of burning it chutz lizmano, here Rabbi Yossi says there's a chiyuv karis. So clearly his rationale is not because of ein mefagel b'chatzi matir, because here this is just the flour, not the levonah, and Rabbi Yossi is saying that there is a chiyuv karis here. So clearly whatever is rationale for the levonah, for the frankincense, it's not because of ein mefagel b'chatzi matir. It's a different consideration which we will get to soon. So again, mishum de kaboy lemisnei sefer, I'm reading again, the haktir levonah lemacher, that when the komets is scooped up with the intention of burning the levonah chutz lezmanu. Rabbi Yossi and Apostle Femo Karis. Rabbi Yossi says that there's no chiyuv karis. It's not pigul. So Madutema may have thought time Rabbi Yossi mishum de kasavim mefagel b'chatzi matir. I might think that by the seifa, with the intention for the levonah, he says that it's not pigul. There's no chiyuv karis because he also a mefagel b'chatzi matir because it's only half of the matir. There's the levonah, but there's also the komets. Therefore, maybe I would think even in the ratio, when the kavanah, when scooping up the komets, is to burn the komets, but that's only half of the matir. What about the levonah? So I might think that there also, if aim mefagel b'chatzi matir, there's no chiyuv karis there as well. Kamash malan dibaha moded. Therefore, it's important for the Mishnah to say no. Here, Rabbi Yossi's moded. Here, when it comes to the machshava about the burning the komets, here Rabbi Yossi does agree that there will be a chiyuv karis. Drink a shik of water. Says the Gemara, l'harta levonosa l'mocher Rabbi Yossi and Apostle Femo Karis. Okay, so we just quoted the Mishnah that, of course, Rabbi Yossi says that when a kometz is scooped up with the intention of burning the levonah chutz lezmano, there's no chiyuv karis. How come? Very interesting stuff. Omer Shlokish says, Shlokish, Omer Rabbi Yossi, a matir mefagel es matir. Very interesting stuff. So it says Rish Lakish that the reason for Rabbi Yossi is ein matir mefagel matir. When it comes to a mincha, there are two matirs. There's the komets and there's the levonah. And therefore, scooping up the komets, which is one of the matirs, with the intention of burning the levonah, which is another matir, chutz lizmano, that is not pigul. Ein matir mefagel matir. One matir, a machshav by one matir is not going to pigul with another matir. Again, Amar Shlokish says, Rabbi Yossi would say, ein matir mefagel es matir v'chein Ata omer b'shnei bazicha levonah shalechem aponim. Ho! Shei matir mefagel es matir. Ho! What's another example of this? Says the Gemara. Lechem aponim, the showbreads. Of course, with the showbreads, as we know, Baruch Hashem, we've had the zchus to be talking about the lechem aponim recently. We're going to talk about them a lot more. Menachos, what is zchus to be able to learn the Rebbeinu Shalom's Torah? Mamish. What is zchus to be able to learn Menachos? Who gets to learn Menachos? We do. Unbelievable. Wow. It's hard, but it's the best. Anyways, where were we? So the lechem aponim, there's the two bazichin, and you have to burn the two bazichin full of frankincense every Shabbos when it's time to swap the contents of the shulchan and time for the kohanim to eat the showbreads. So before anybody can eat the showbreads, the two ladles full of frankincense would be brought out to the mizbeach hachitzon and burnt there. Now, both of them need to be, right, so both ladles of frankincense need to be burnt in order to allow the showbreads to be eaten. So there's two matirs there essentially as well, two ladles of frankincense. So there as well, when burning one ladle of frankincense, the kohen has kavanah to burn the other one, chutz lizmano, say the next day. So that would not be pigul either, because ein matir mefagel matir. Both ladles of frankincense they're both matirs. One matir is not mefagel, the other matir. Azoy. Now, frag the Gemara, my b'chinata omer. Why did we need to say, and similarly we find by the lechem aponim? I mean, if we just laid down a principle of ein matir mefagel matir, so sure, yeah, of course, obviously, yeah, lechem aponim, two bazichin, two matirs, one won't be mefagel, the other kid, like, what we're just going to point, we're just going to like trying to find, oh yeah, there's also that case. So like, we laid out a principle, we can apply the framework to wherever it applies. Why do we have to point out and also by the lechem aponim? Of course, okay, yeah, 2 matirs, of course. And matir mefagel matir. Why do we have to go into detail? Right, Omer. Why do we need to bring also the example of lechem aponim? I may have thought time of Rabbi Yossi by levonah that the reason for Rabbi Yossi when it comes to levonah is mishum de lav mina de mincha hi. I may have thought that the reason why Rabbi Yossi says ein matir mefagel matir when it comes to the mincha is because you have the kometz, which is flour, and you have the levonah, which is kind of like a parallel thing, let's say. Right, the frankincense together with the flour offering, you also bring the frankincense. Not even all flour offerings have frankincense, but most flour offerings have frankincense, and together with the flour offering, you bring the frankincense, but it's not really like part of the flour offering. It's kind of like brought with it. So therefore, maybe I would think that Rabbi Yossi Shittas, when it comes to Korban Mincha, where you have the flour and then you have the frankincense, kind of two different things, ain't matir mefagel matir. Avol, levonah, but when it comes to the 2 ladles of levonah by the lechem aponim, de mina de adad, that they are the same thing. They're identical, as far as I'm aware, they're identical ladles filled with a kometz, I think it's a kometz of frankincense each. So in that case, where they are the same thing, maybe I would say they're matir mefagel matir. So ema mefagel adad, maybe one can be mefagel the other. So kamaj malon. So therefore we're saying v'chein atavotze belechem aponim, that we find the same thing by lechem aponim, that also there, even though the 2 bazichan are identical, still they ein matir mefagel matir. But now 1 second, the Gemara just said something very interesting, friends. What did the Gemara just say that was very interesting? Well, if we back up 3 lines, it says ma'adir tema. I may have thought time of Rabbi Yossi by levonah mishum de lab de minchai. I may have thought to say that the rationale for Rabbi Yossi to say hey matir mefagel matir by the korban mincha is because the levonah is not part of the mincha. I may have thought that. Friends, everybody flip back to the Mishnah. Now, flip back to the Mishnah, quick. What does the Mishnah say? Pigul, they said to Rabbi Yossi, Mashina zeh min hazevach. Why is it anything different than the korban, where burning the emurim is pigul? You could have pigul by the emurim. And the reason why kavanah v'chutzizmanu for the levonah is there's no chayv kares, is because the levonah is not part of the mincha. The Mishnah literally explained Rabbi Yossi's rationale. Why, when scooping up a kometz, if the kohen has kavanah to burn the levonah chutz l'zmano, there's no chiyuv kares. Rabbi Yossi literally says in the Mishnah, because the levonah is not part of the mincha. And what did the Gemara just now say? I may have thought to say that the reason why Rabbi Yossi says that ein matir mefagel matir is because the frankincense, the levonah, is not part of the mincha. So therefore we have also the lechem aponim to say that even when they're the same, you're also chayv. But what do you mean? That goes... The Mishnah literally said it's because the frankincense is not part of the mincha, and now we're saying, I may have thought the reason is because the frankincense is not part of it. What do you mean? Of course that's the reason. Rabbi Yossi himself said it's the reason. So therefore, frankly, Gemara, when we matzis amar taima Rabbi Yossi belevonah lab mishum de lab mina de mincha hi, it's a kind of double negative, but it's not actually hard. Does that make a triple negative? It's a double negative that is not hard. Triple negative? So frankly, Gemara, I don't understand. Is it really possible to say, or so I obviously, as we all know by now on Babble and Talmud, I like to phrase things positively because they're easier for me, and I imagine other people to understand. Of course, Rabbi Yossi's opinion is because of the frankincense is not part of the mincha. He himself says it, right? Everyone agrees with that. Bakatani Seifa, Amrlo Ma Shinsa Min HaZevach, where it says in the Mishnah. The Chacham say to Rabbi Yossi, why is levonah any different than the emurim of a zevach? That when one slaughters an animal with the intention of burning the emurim, it's pigul. And yet you're saying that when one scoops up the komets with the intention of burning the levonah, it's not pigul. Amr Laden, he says to them, well, because when it comes to a animal, the blood, the meat, the emurin, it's all the same animal. But ulevona eina min amincha. But the rationale, says of Yossi, when it comes to levona, is that because it's not min amincha. So my eina min amincha eina be'ikuv mincha. This is very interesting. So the Gemara explains, what does it mean when Rabbi Yossi says that the levona is not min amincha? What it means is that it's not me'akev in the mincha. What does that mean? It means that it's be'etzem parallel to the mincha. What does that mean? It means, well, when it comes to korbanis, when it comes to pigul, there are matirin. What does it mean there's matirin? That there are orders of things, right? When it comes to an animal, when you slaughter an animal, when you slaughter korban chatas, you can't just take the meat and run off and go eat it. You can't do that yet. You first need to do zrikas adam. Zrikas adam now allows you to burn the emurim, take the meat. There's kind of like a vertical progression. You can't eat the meat until you first do the zrikas adam. You do the zrikas adam, that's matir the meat. Now, when it comes to a korban mincha, so burning the komets now allows you to eat the shirayim. There's that progression. The levonah is not part of that progression. It's not like burning the komets now allows you to burn the levonah. No, you could burn the levonah first. You could burn the komets first. It's like a parallel. Yeah, you have to. Both the komets and the levonah are matir the shirayim. But while the shirayim needs to wait for these matirs, the levonah doesn't need to wait for the komets in order to be matir. The levonah doesn't need to wait for the komets to be offered so that it could be offered. The levonah could be offered before the komets. The komets could be offered before the levonah. They're independent of each other. They're parallel. They both have to be done, but they're working in parallel. So because they're working in parallel, and one is not matir the other, one is not right. The levonah is not part of the progression of the korban mincha. So therefore, ein matir mefagel matir. Any kavana by the komets is not going to affect the levonah in a way that there will be a chiyuv kares and a chiyuv pigul. Let's read in the Gemara. For eina be'ikuv mincha, that the levonah is not in sort of the progression, in the holding ups, in the bottlenecks of a mincha. It's parallel. It's adjacent. The lav, it's not that, for example, the komets holds up as a bottleneck for the shirayim. You can't eat the shirayim until the komets is burnt to the mizbeach. The miskater komets, so long as the komets has not been burnt, lo misach shirayim. Well, then the shirayim can't be eaten. And therefore, what we don't say is that just like the komets is ma'akev the shirayim, it's also ma'akev the levonah, that you have to first offer the komets before you can offer the levonah. No, we don't say that, right? As we said 2 lines earlier, right? The lav ki'echidim, right? It's not that, right? So therefore, the komets does not allow the levonah to be offered. Ella, rather, rather, if you want, sure, burn the komets first and then the levonah. But if you want to burn the levonah first and then the komets, it doesn't matter. So because the levonah is independent and it's not kind of part of the progression, so to speak, of a korban and dependent on anything else, so therefore, that's why we say ein matir mefagel matir. And I reckon that would be the same idea also by the baziche lechem apanim also. Offer this one first, offer that one first. It's not like one is dependent on the other. Now the rabbis also agree with ein matir mefagel matir. They also agree with that in principle, but they define it differently. Rabbanan ki amrinan ein matir mefagel es matir. When we say a matir mefagel es matir animile, heichadlo ikbu bechad mana. That's when they are not in the same vessel. But if they're in the same vessel, then they're treated as one. What does that mean? I hope I understand what it means. Basically, I think what it means is that the way I understand it, I mean, that's just kind of how I understand the words. I didn't look it up anywhere to confirm. But be'etzem, how does the korban mincha work? Well, you have the mixing bowl, you add the oil, you add the flour, you add the levonah into the same bowl. You then take a kometz, you scoop up the kometz, you put it into the kometz bowl. You then collect all the particles of levonah, and you add that to the kometz bowl. So the levonah, it's all in the same vessel. That's all. So to say that, these are like separate things, and one matir is not mefagel, the other matir, the chacham say, come on, they're all being brought together. Therefore, it's going to be be'etzem the same korban, and there will be pigul. Where the chachamim say, ein matir mefagel matir is, for example, the kis be'atzeres. For example, on Shavuos, there are two sheep. There are two sheeps. Two kvasim that are offered on Shavuos. So, for example, if you slaughter one with the intention of eating the other one, chutz zmano, then that ein matir mefagel matir. You can't have a kavanah about one animal for another animal. That is where they draw their line. And now for the second section of Daf Yud Gimel Masechta, not Yevamos, Menachos, collecting the levonah from the mixing bowl. Amr Yanai, says Reb Yanai, likut levonah bizarre puzzle. Says Reb Yanai, that a non-kohen may not collect the particles of levonah from the mincha, i.e., a kohen must be the collector of the particles, right? So you have the mixing bowl. In the mixing bowl, there's the flour and the oil. The levonah is added to there. As we saw the other day, the levonah are like all these like little bally kind of particle-y kind of drops kind of things, little like gumdrop little things. So, somebody's here. Hopefully they won't make noise. So, what was it saying? Right. So you have all this levonah in the bowl, in the mixing bowl. All of the levonah now needs to be. I just said I hope they won't make noise, and they came in and announced their presence and slammed the door. I'll call upon him. So where were we? So collecting all those particles and put it in the mixing bowl. I assume that's the point that we're saying. And putting it in the. I assume we're talking about collecting all the particles from the mixing bowl and putting them into the. What's it? The kometz bowl. Okay, I assume that's what we're talking about. What else were we talking about? That's the collecting of the. I assume that is the collecting of the particles that we're talking about. Okay, now where are we? Amr Rabbi says Rabbi likut levonah bizarre puzzle. Azar collecting all the particles of levonah is possible, i.e., collecting the particles of the levonah must be done by a kohen. My time outcome, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Rabbi Yirmiyah, mishum olacha naguba. Because of olacha. Of course, there is kmitza, nesina bakli, holacha, and bringing it to the mizbeach. So friends, this is actually really interesting. As I was just speaking, first of all, I just said something that I got confused. I was just, right, there's the Kamitza, Nesina Bakli, Holacha, and Haktar, burning it. But anyways, friends, as I was saying this over, all of a sudden I was having second guesses, and I was thinking like, wait, what is this gathering of the particles? So very interestingly, I had to look at Rashi. And what does Rashi say? Where am I? Okay, so Rashi says, Likud levonah. I'm reading Rashi. After the burning of the kometz, only then it sounds like he would then go back to the mixing bowl, I guess, and take the levonah, collect the levonah, and burn it. But anyways, what's interesting is that seems to be a little bit of a chiddush, because I think I just looked at the art scroll for like some clarity and stuff. Apparently it's a big question, because I think the generally understood way, as pointed out in the article in the notes, the generally understood way, I think, is that there's the mixing bowl, as I've kind of been saying, right? There's the mixing bowl, and you have the flour in there and the frankincense, everything in the mixing bowl. You take the komets out of the mixing bowl, put it into the komets bowl, then you collect the frankincense from the mixing bowl, put that in the komets bowl as well. Then you take the komets and the levonah up to the mizbeach and you burn it. I think that's generally how I understood and how it's understood. But as I was saying that, then I was like wondering, like, wait, how does this exactly fit into the Mishnah, and what's the holacha part? Because are we talking about like transferring the particles of levonah from the mixing bowl to the komets bowl, or from the komets bowl to the fire? Like, what's going on? So Rashi has a very interesting opinion here, which, while it's questionable how that exactly fits into the generally understood progression of things, of like the levonah going from the mixing bowl to the komets bowl, he has a very interesting opinion here, though, which is that actually it sounds like the Kohen, which, while this sounds like a big chiddush, it does make the Gemara, I think, make a little bit more sense, although we have to figure out like what exactly it means. But it sounds like basically, I don't exactly know how everything would work here, because it's kind of a big chiddush, but basically the Kohen would burn the komets, and then it sounds like afterwards he would go back. Again, what does he say? Sounds like the Kohen would go and burn the komets, and then he would come back for the levonah, collect that, and burn that. And we're saying that it's when he came back to collect the levonah, you shouldn't have a zar collect the particles of levonah and give them to the Kohen. Very, very interesting. So again, let's read it from the beginning. Rabbi Yanai says, Rabbi Yanai, likud levonah bizarre possible. It's possible for a zar to. So let's assume, like Rashi is saying, that after the Kohen has already burnt the komets and he's coming back to collect the particles, it would be forbidden for a zar to collect the particles for him and give it to the Kohen. How come? My time, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Rabbi Yirmiyah mishum halacha naguba, because it's a form of halacha, right? There's 4 steps there's 4 avodas by a mincha. There's the kmitza, there's the nesina bakli, the holacha, and the burning, the aktara. And therefore, let's go by there for a second. Kasavra olacha shelo beregel shma olacha, ve'olacha bizar psula. This, of course, was a difficult sugya that we learned in Masechtas Zvachim. I was thinking earlier as I was going over this. Basically, like every sugya in Zvachim is difficult. It's like every page on Zvachim is like a new sugya. Every few pages is a new sugya, and every sugya is difficult. I mean, every few pages, shchut echutz Allah b'chutz, Pigul, mefagel b'chatzi matir, holacha shelo beregel. It was like the kibbutz begotten by a korban chatzis. Just every few pages is another complicated sugya. So this was a complicated sugya in Masechtas Zvachim about holacha shelo beregel. So here we're assuming that that walking doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use your legs to walk. It means making whatever you need to bring to the mizbeach that much closer to the mizbeach. And therefore, we're saying holacha by a zar is possible, and also holacha shelo beregel is a form of holacha. Meaning, if you have a zar, right, so you have the Kohen, he just went and he burnt the komets, and he's coming back to get the levonah, and you have a zar collecting all the pieces of levonah and giving it to the Kohen, he's basically getting it a little bit closer to the mizbeach. So that's a form of holacha, and he's not allowed to do that. Again, no chamo. Rabbi Yanai, likud levonah bizarre possible. My time, Rabbi Yirmiyah mishum holacha naguba, it's a form of holacha. Because holacha, without using your feet, just bringing the substance closer to the mizbech is a form of holacha. Holacha bizarre psula, and that is holacha is possible bizarre. Therefore, a zar needs to stay away from likud levonah. Reb Mari says, Reb Mari wants to argue that we also learn it from a Mishnah from yesterday. We had said this is the rule, that anybody who takes the komets or puts it in the vessel or brings it to the mizbeach or burns it on the mizbeach, any of those steps with kavanas of pigul are problematic. Bishlama komets anu shochet. I understand why komets would be a problem because that's shchita. Molich nami anu molich. Right, bringing it to the mizbeach is right. Bringing the komets to the mizbeach is like bringing the dam of the animal to the mizbeach. Matir anu zorik, and burning the komets is like doing zrikas adam. Elinosim bekli mai kovid. But why? What's the deal with putting it in a vessel by a mincha? If we're going to say because it's similar to Kabbalah Sadam by a korban, midami is putting. We've seen this also I think in Masechet Zvachim, is putting a kometz in a bowl really that similar to receiving the squirting blood in a vessel? Hasan and Mele, by the korban, the blood is squirting on its own and landing in your vessel that you're holding there. Over here, you're taking the kometz and placing it yourself in the vessel. Those are different. Rather, since taking the mincha, taking the kometz and putting it in a vessel is a crucial step and must be done, therefore it's considered an important avoda al korchech majvila ki Kabbalah. Therefore, we'll treat the placing of the kometz into the vessel, even though it's different than Kabbalah Adam, we'll categorize it with Kabbalah Adam nonetheless, since it's an important thing that must be done. Okay. Hachinami, and therefore we'll say the same thing as well, that since the collecting the particles of levonah and bringing it to the mizbeach must be done, it's an important avoda, and therefore we're going to say, well, what's it similar to? It's similar to halacha. So therefore we want to say, based on the Mishnah or from yesterday with the kometz, nesina bekli, holacha and aktara, we want to say that since collecting the levonah is a crucial step, therefore we're going to essentially say that it's what could it be similar to, what could it be compared to? It could be compared to holacha. No, don't have that sort of symbolic interpretation. Lolam the dummy li Kabbalah. No, look, at the end of the day, I'll tell you why putting the kometz into a vessel, nesina bekli, is like Kabbalah. Yes, it's a little bit different. By Kabbalah Sadam, the blood is being received in the vessel, and here the kometz is being put in the vessel. Sure, it's different in that sense. But look, at the end of the day, in both cases, whether it's the blood, whether it's the kometz, it's becoming sanctified in a vessel. Whether it got in there on its own, whether it was placed in there, doesn't really matter that much. And therefore, the reason why nesina bekli is similar to Kabbalah Sadam is because you have a substance that's being put into, that's ending up in a vessel and becoming holy from that vessel, and in that way they are similar. It's not because like it's an important thing and it needs to be done, therefore what's it similar to, and therefore we should also say that like particle collecting is similar to. No, we don't necessarily have a proof from there. We did want to say, without the proof though, nonetheless, we wanted to say though that collecting the particles, giving it to the Kohen, is a form of halacha, and therefore it can't be done by a zar. Friends, that was Daf Yud Gimel, Daf 13 of Masechet Menachos. Friends, Daf 13 was a very interesting daf in my opinion. We learned about ein matir, mefagel matir. Both Rabbi Yossi and the Chacham agree with that, but they interpret it differently. Rabbi Yossi says that what ein matir, mefagel matir is that even, for example, by a mincha, where you have the kometz and you have the levonah, and both of them are matirs, you have to burn the kometz and the levonah in order to allow the shiari mincha to be eaten by the kohanim. So having a kavana by the kometz that you're gonna burn the levonah chutz zmana will not be pigul. It'll be the korban will be aser, will be pasul, and pasul and. But right, it's possible, but there's no chiyuv kares. Right. And right, so Rabbi Yossi Be'etzim says that ein matir mefagel matir applies even to a kometz and to the levonah, and that's because they're not like dependent on each other in the same way that, for example, the shiari mincha are dependent on the kometz to be offered. Whereas the rabbis say no, it's the same korban, and of course you can have pigul, right? If you scoop up the komets with the intention of burning the levonah the next day chutzas manu, of course that would be pigul, as we learned yesterday. They say where does ein matir mefagel matir apply? That's, for example, two different entities like kivsei atzeres, right? Slaughtering one of the sheep with the intention of eating the other one, chutzas manu, that is not going to be pigul. And then we talked about collecting the levonah from the mixing bowl. We said it cannot be done by a zar because it's a form of holacha, and holacha, we say holacha beregel shma. Halacha shelo beregel shma holacha is a type of halacha, and it would have to be done by a zar. No, it can't be done by a zar. It would have to be done by a kohen. Wow, my brain is starting to go a little bit. I think it was that. Yes, I recorded 2 dafs today. The previous one was a bit of a doozy. Friends, I hope you enjoyed Daf Yud Gimel of Masechta Zvachim. Cheers. No, Masechta Menachos. Sheesh, is this Masechta Zvachim? Is it Masechta Yivamis? Is it Masechta Good Shabbos.